When my husband left me for my best friend, he told me a useless woman didn't deserve a family. He wanted a baby boy to inherit his legacy, and she gave him exactly what I couldn't. I was shattered, left to pick up the pieces of my broken life while they celebrated their perfect new world. 1 year later, I ran into him at the hospital. He smirked, cradling his 1-year-old son, and mocked me right there in the hallway, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Leaving you was the best decision I ever made," he sneered. I just smiled and whispered, "Really?" 5 minutes later, a prestigious man walked into the room. The moment my former best friend saw him, her face drained of color, and she dropped the baby bottle she was holding. They thought they had destroyed me, but they were about to realize their perfect family was built entirely on a lie. My name is Vanessa. I am 28 years old, and up until 12 months ago, I believed my life in Seattle was absolutely flawless. I had a beautiful home, a career I loved, and a husband I worshipped. But everything I knew shattered into a million jagged pieces on a rainy Tuesday night. I was sitting in our living room when Owen walked through the front door, his face completely devoid of emotion. Without even looking me in the eye, he dropped his keys onto the counter and calmly announced that he was packing his bags. I thought it was a cruel joke. But then he dropped the ultimate bombshell. He wasn't just leaving. He was leaving me for Chloe, my childhood best friend, the woman who had stood beside me at our wedding. The words that poured out of his mouth next cut deeper than any physical blade ever could. He looked at me with pure disgust and said that a useless, broken woman like me didn't deserve a family. He told me he needed a real woman who could secure his bloodline, and Chloe was already pregnant with the baby boy I had desperately struggled to conceive for years. In a single evening, the two people I trusted most in this world completely destroyed my existence. They stripped me of my dignity, my marriage, and my lifelong friendship, leaving me entirely alone in the hollow shell of our house. As Owen walked out the door with his luggage, he didn't care that he was leaving behind a completely broken person. He was already stepping into a celebrated new world with my best friend, leaving me buried alive under the heavy weight of their ultimate betrayal. The grueling months that followed the divorce were a blur of isolation and deep depression. While I sat alone in the quiet darkness of my apartment, trying to piece my shattered soul back together, Owen and Chloe were busy flaunting their new life all over social media. Every single post felt like a deliberate slap in the face. There were photos of the lavish baby shower, ultrasound pictures captioned with "Our Little Prince," and eventually, a flood of celebratory images welcoming their newborn baby boy into the world. It seemed like the entire world was applauding their betrayal while I was expected to just fade away into nothingness. But seeing their smug, smiling faces online triggered something deep inside me. I realized that crying over people who treated my pain like a victory was a waste of my life. So, I made a choice. I completely deleted all my social media accounts, cut every single tie to our mutual acquaintances, and vanished from their sight. I decided to channel every ounce of my grief, anger, and humiliation into a secret personal transformation. I went back to school, threw myself into my studies, and eventually landed an elite position at the city's leading medical research hospital. I was completely rewriting my destiny, building a life of true purpose and success, completely hidden from their toxic world. Before I tell you what happened next, comment the city you are watching from so I can see how far my journey of healing and transformation has reached. They thought they had buried me in the dirt, but they had absolutely no idea I was actually a seed, quietly growing stronger in the dark. A year had passed since the day my life completely imploded, and I was finally beginning to feel like myself again. One bright Tuesday morning, I was walking down the pristine, quiet hallway of the hospital's exclusive VIP pavilion. As a lead researcher, I usually spent my days tucked away in the quiet sanctuary of the laboratories, but today I needed to deliver some urgent patient data to the oncology board. I was focused, holding a sleek digital tablet, wearing my crisp white lab coat with a newfound sense of pride and professional accomplishment. But as I rounded the corner near the private pediatrics wing, my feet suddenly froze flat against the polished linoleum floor. Two incredibly familiar faces were standing just a few yards away from me, and the sight of them made my breath catch instantly in my throat. It was Owen and Chloe. They were dressed in high-end designer clothes, looking affluent and perfectly polished, as if they had just stepped off the pages of a luxury family magazine. Chloe was cradling a chubby toddler with dark hair, whispering something softly into Owen's ear while he laughed warmly. They were visiting the facility for a routine checkup, completely oblivious to the world around them. For a split second, a wave of the old, familiar panic threatened to wash over me, but I forced it down, drawing a deep, steady breath into my lungs. Just as I adjusted my grip on my tablet, Owen's eyes flicked upward and locked directly onto mine. Instead of looking embarrassed, uncomfortable, or guilty for what he had done to me, his face instantly twisted into a malicious, arrogant smirk. He nudged Chloe's shoulder, and together, they intentionally steered their path right toward me. Owen stopped directly in front of me, purposefully blocking the narrow hallway. His steel eyes swept over my white lab coat with an air of amused superiority, completely unaffected by the gravity of his past cruelty. He loudly mocked me right there in the middle of the busy corridor, his booming voice intentionally drawing the attention of passing nurses and patients. He sneered that leaving me was the absolute best decision he had ever made, loudly proclaiming that a useless woman simply couldn't have children. He boasted about how lucky he was to have a beautiful 1-year-old son with my former best friend. He spoke with such dripping arrogance, clearly assuming I was still the exact same helpless victim he had abandoned a year ago. He gestured boastfully toward the toddler, bragging about how choosing a fertile, useful woman like Chloe had successfully saved his family bloodline and secured his precious legacy. He scoffed at my career, implying that my presence in a hospital was just a sad, desperate attempt to play dress-up while remaining entirely alone and unloved. Beside him, Chloe stood looking incredibly smug, wearing a patronizing smile that turned my stomach. She was holding a plastic baby bottle, silently enjoying my perceived public humiliation without a single shred of remorse or human decency. They stood there side by side, radiating a collective sense of absolute triumph, waiting for me to burst into tears, scream, or run away in shame. But I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. I kept my posture perfectly straight, letting the echo of his arrogant words completely fill the empty space between us. I let him finish his hateful rant, looked him dead in the eye, and smiled softly. I simply replied, "Really?" Exactly 5 minutes later, heavy footsteps echoed clearly down the corridor, shattering the tense silence Owen had created. The heavy double doors of the VIP wing swung open, and the hospital's chief medical officer walked inside, trailing closely behind a tall, commanding figure. It was Dr. Adrian Montgomery, a prestigious billionaire donor and the brilliant mind who funded our entire medical research division. He possessed an undeniable presence that instantly commanded the attention of everyone in the room, making Owen's loud, arrogant posturing look entirely small and pathetic by comparison. Owen's eyes widened slightly as he recognized Adrian from local business journals, his smug demeanor instantly shifting into a desperate attempt to look influential. He began to smooth his designer jacket, clearly preparing to step forward and eagerly introduce himself to the wealthy mogul. But Adrian didn't even glance in Owen's direction. He walked right past the stunned couple, a warm, genuine smile breaking across his handsome face the moment his eyes locked onto mine. Without a moment of hesitation, he wrapped his arm affectionately around my waist, pulling me close in a protective gesture that spoke volumes. He looked down at me with pure admiration and addressed me as his brilliant fiancé, loudly thanking me for compiling the lead research data for our upcoming foundation board meeting. Owen stood frozen, his mouth dropping open in absolute shock as the sudden revelation of my immense success and high-status relationship completely brought his world to a halt. The woman he had labeled as useless was standing as an equal beside the most powerful man in the city, and the look of sheer disbelief on his pale face was absolutely priceless. As Adrian introduced himself, his eyes casually glanced down at the baby boy sleeping in Chloe's arms. A look of quiet recognition passed over his face as he stared at the child's distinct features, then flicked his gaze up to Chloe. He tilted his head, adjusting his glasses, and calmly mentioned that he recognized her face from the hospital's high-end, confidential private fertility database. He explained that as the primary donor and chairman of the facility, he personally reviewed the files of clients utilizing their premium genetic selection program. The very moment the words left Adrian's mouth, the smug expression on Chloe's face instantly vanished, replaced by a look of sheer terror. Her skin turned completely pale, as white as a ghost, and her hands began to tremble so violently that she lost her grip entirely. The plastic baby bottle she was holding dropped straight out of her hand, crashing loudly onto the polished floor and spilling milk everywhere. Owen stared at her, completely confused by her extreme reaction, but Adrian wasn't finished. With a calm, clinical tone, he revealed a shocking truth that Chloe had frantically tried to hide from the world. 2 years ago, during a routine health panel at this very hospital, Owen had been diagnosed as completely and permanently medically infertile. Chloe knew this, and to trap him into leaving me, she had secretly used an anonymous sperm donor from our database to get pregnant. The baby boy Owen loved so much, the child he claimed secured his precious family bloodline and inheritance, didn't have a single drop of his DNA. His perfect new family was built entirely on a massive, calculated deception. Owen's world completely collapsed right there in the hospital hallway as the devastating weight of the truth finally sank in. The pride and arrogance drained from his face instantly, replaced by a hollow look of pure horror. He turned to Chloe, his voice shaking with a terrifying mix of rage and disbelief, demanding to know if it was true. Chloe couldn't even look him in the eye. She just sobbed hysterically, her silence confirming every single word Adrian had just spoken. Owen had destroyed his own marriage, threw away his dignity, and branded me as useless, all to inherit a child that wasn't even his. Adrian and I didn't say another word. We calmly turned around and walked away hand in hand, leaving the cheating couple to publicly tear each other apart as security moved in to quiet them down. Over the next few months, justice handled the rest beautifully. Owen filed for a bitter divorce and sued Chloe, but the scandal completely ruined his reputation and his business. Today, I live in a gorgeous new cottage by the coast, surrounded by peace, success, and a man who truly loves me for who I am. Life has a beautiful way of taking care of karma, proving that what is built on cruelty and lies will always crumble in the end. Do you think Owen got exactly what he deserved? Or should I have let him find out the truth on his own? Drop a comment below with your honest thoughts because I personally read every single reaction. Also, if you want to see how sweet revenge can truly get, click on either of the 2 videos on the screen right now to dive into our channel's absolute biggest plot twists. I will see you over there.